All right, here. We have the video that I just made on narrative continuity. I was thinking about it for a minute. And I guess some of the design and idea of this series is to conceptualize and make a game that has a perfect narrative continuity between the story and the gameplay. And I'm pretty sure I could make a game that lines up 1 to 1, where there's no gap in continuity between the gameplay and the story of the game. And looking at examples of games that do this well, I'm thinking about like Mass Effect as a game that has really stellar narrative continuity and how they build into the mythology of the game world everything that happens in the game. You know, like Shepard is the commander of the crew and explorer of new worlds, and you step into that role with interactivity in the game, which is fun. But then Shepard is also a military badass in a chaotic world with all of these factions that are fighting each other, people that need help, who can be the military commander and with the best gear and the training that the entirety of humanity has to offer. You're already an awesome character with this like huge potential and great responsibility. But you are the main character of a game and is a militant badass that has enough training and emotional training to take on these huge, massive scale sci-fi war conflicts without like going PTSD believably. You know, or it's not like yeah, PTSD just completely doesn't exist in this world. You know, so like whitewashing the entirety of human conflict so that we can make like a fun, engaging murder simulator. You know, when Feng Zhu says it, I was like, ooh, uh, he's like, yeah, the Hitman games are pretty much like a murder simulator, you know. So we want to have some like clock towers in the design. And I'm like, yo, dude, oh, you're unmasking some game design shit that might not be entirely productive for the human psyche, and there are reasons for it, you know. And you don't want to take it too seriously. You'd be like, shame on you, war games, for not acknowledging any war fighters or veterans who have ever existed and instead existing completely within the narrative of military propaganda. That is the world. It is divergent 100%. There's never been a war game ever that was made on planet Earth. They exist within the world of military propaganda. And when you invested yourself in like actually learning a little bit about like the effect of war and the impact on human lives, you're like, damn, I actually really respect soldiers and veterans and what they've gone through. And to just like spit in their face so you can make like hip hop money and like sell murder simulators to children is like a little bit that is the one beef that I do have in game design. Yes, those games are incredibly like innovative and effective at doing what they try to do. Um, but are they reflective or respectful of human life at all, or completely not? Like someone that plays those games becomes desensitized to violence or something. Like they're more likely to commit war crimes when they find that their fantasy of soldier life is only that. You know. Sorry, I can get a little bit like if we give a presentation like that, it will be after hearing some of the real stories of soldiers and veterans and stuff like more veterans took their lives after the chaos of the Iraqi conflict and died in active combat. What was the real whoa, and like thinking of that, like with empathy and compassion, if you've gone to this place and you're gonna be like a martyr for your society and try and do good out there and suffer through so much intense training and shit, we need to become completely psychologically unstable and to like run into atrocities and like things only to be haunted by all these ghosts, like a war shrink and like a bottle of pills and then, till it doesn't work anymore. God. You have only the memories of all of their loved ones. And those ghosts live on. So, in something that we do to try and exercise ghosts of this world, without getting too bogged down into anything, but to reserve the space to take things seriously where it matters and to cast a vote towards the impact we'd like to see in the world, while we're, engaging heroic fantasy and like these ideas and worlds, and making fun puzzles in ways that you can test your skills. To do that in fun ways that are productive, but also reflective of human life. Yeah, something we want to do. And I'm pretty like I'm interested in making that game of perfect narrative continuity. You know, where you can make a sequence of events and stuff where everything that's happening and your motivations as a player, but then the motivations of the character, and you're like fusion with them isn't one to one. You know, usually. Uh, but then you're like, yeah, you know, you're playing Mass Effect and you're like, you want to do good and you're personally invested in all of their character stories. And I love character stories in games where you just like there's all sorts of different types of conflict and like who do you trust, and there's complex things happening that like break into like exploration and combat and like leveling up your abilities and all of these game things very, very nicely. um and that also is a totally fun place where you can get writers invested in creating a really interesting world of a game, really good characters and a progression, your interaction with the world of that game, the game progression and the whole scope of the game. But then you can have people where the idea is not to only create entertainment value stories, but to have stories that have entertainment value enough to captivate, but then to do interesting things that you haven't seen before. We add to that so the writers can also engage their highest power and value. Or if we hit entertainment design, then they can do things and put their own unique imagination and intelligence into the world of the game. And that comes into making very good frameworks for games. And I like thinking of those. Like, what would the story of this game look like if the gameplay was considered as a part? And it almost always have to be fantasy or sci-fi to have anything that makes sense of that. You don't always necessarily want that, but even we could look at like if you are going to do a completely real world scenario, and obviously the gameplay sections are going to be like more than that. How do you tie them together effectively? And that is an art form as well, I guess. But there's so many real world stories out there that, and just as a lover of fantasy and sci-fi, like we can look at that, and I do still appreciate that. There's things that are unique about that genre. But fantasy and sci-fi are really, really, really cool for capturing, you know, things that we know in a new and fantastic way. Uh, my art teacher said to me once that culture goes back and forth between like the fantastic. I almost swear he said Dionysian, like Dionysus, and then the other side is the Greek guy of structure, right? And he was also like the divine or the Lucifer, or the chaos and order. They go between like a pendulum focus of order and chaos. Like the Grecian mythology is super fantastic. Grecian art is really fantastic. It exists not only in the physical material world, but also in the world of dreams, the world of the imagination. It's really expansive and dynamic. It doesn't mean, I mean, there's still like this huge moral ambiguity within the storytelling in worlds of Greece, but they captured something that was way larger than life. When then moving into the Roman Empire, they still integrated the entirety of Grecian philosophy into their culture, right? Where the gods and the deities and the elements carried over, but much more to human life and to the opulence and decadence. But their art became hyper realistic, almost too much, where it was like the story was just about these kings and their thoughts and stuff. It got grounded way more, like from like going to heroic mythology to very much like everyone has to be like corrupt in their own way. You see this in realistic shows where it's like you can't have a perfect hero; they have to be corrupted, and then moral gray areas and stuff. And you can do both. You know, you can have malleable characters. It's not like everyone has to be like a selfish backstabber in their own way, because everyone is, and it's like everyone might be most of the time in some scenarios. There is a profound heroic potential in human life, and there are so many transcendent examples and stories and experiences beyond just mythology that embody that like achieving the fantastic, and becoming your ideals and holding on to super lofty ideals while still being human and going through the steps, but especially in what we aim for, in that cynical kind of, yeah, everyone's on that spectrum of good and evil, everyone's corruptible, and you make interesting alliances in stories within there, I think. But heroic mythology is just super, super cool. I love that. Like Tolkien, and people are like, this is allegorically all of these other things. Like the Lord of the Rings is reflective to like a commentary on Christianity and a power corrupting, and World War I. And he was like, my book was reflective of World War I. Both sides, the first thing they would have done was enslave the hobbits, like the goodness in the Lord of the Rings was something like a higher ideal, and to dream of those higher ideals while still grounding the story in a whole lot of like history and how these different pieces interact with each other, like an intense like mapping out the world and how that works, but not just making a world that is allegorical of the current human condition, but dreams beyond that, and to take that mythology into like what is the goodness of the human condition, and making a world that values that much more than our own, because I think there are people like that, really, really amazing people, your Striders, your Gandalfs, but they're not the people in political power in our world, and maybe they should be, like there's, and there's still like, uh, you know, very corruptible influences within the world of the Lord of the Rings, but it wasn't at any point, and in fact served as not to be that allegorical demonstration of the human condition. Tolkien is very clear on that. Yeah, go, man. That book single-handedly catalyzed the Renaissance in fantasy that we have seen to this day. Like 100%. Like there was like the entirety of mythology before, and then Lord of the Rings, remixing that modern mythology into our modern imaginary. Super cool. Super good. And as video games are by definition larger than life, like these fantastic scenarios, it's a good medium for that, to dream outside the box, and think of interesting things. Yeah. So we'll tackle that, and we'll tackle that with some ideas. I really, really like Brandon Sanderson's. I'm not just going to talk about Brandon Sanderson. He's one of the only guys that I've seen break down stories in a way where it's like you deconstruct them, analyze them, and as you're creating an architecture for your story, you think analytically about all the different pieces and how they interact with each other until you create like a really cool framework. Especially if you're talking about like designing scripts for the entertainment industry or something, where this is going to be passed off to other people. They're going to like change all of it, so you're creating a framework for that innovation, like how you can instill a sense of duty and character in your world, even if someone else wrote all of it. So to make those things intrinsic within the architecture of the story, where they would hopefully hold through. And two, so to look at that deconstruction of different stories and what they're doing and what works, and then to work it into interesting compositions for game design or comics. So like we're using an art style like this, we're doing explorations like this, and this to compile our things, our characters, our worlds, our props, so you have this isolated incidence of a whole world. You have a little snapshot of a world that's made up of all the characters, the conflict, the narrative and the plot as you go through it, and to create a nice snapshot that can become reflective of this much larger thing. With the dream that maybe if it got popular, it could become a larger thing. If people championed it, then they could like have it as something. There's some stories where I'd like to make them, but there's other stories where it's like I just love to see the story get made and to see other people fall in love with it as well, to be one part of a greater whole. So to make like story orphans with a good direction, and then stripping back the whatever the automotive finish so that you can look at all the different parts and how they interact together and how I made it and what some of those things are. Like I plan on making a lot of creator based content online and on my channel. Um, there's some things that you make have like mass appeal, and other people that are doing lots of great entertainment things as well, and I love that. But if those people are like already doing these things, I want to have creator based content. It gets more in depth, more specific. It looks at these things on a deeper level, and specifically how they were made, how you can make them, what are the tools, what are the techniques, what are the steps in the process, how can you best educate yourself and prepare yourself, invest yourself in that, and to start taking steps, feel good about them, and to have confidence to make that space fun, to make it light, to make it energy giving, and then how to apply your highest level of focus into that, how to use your focus deliberately and make progress, spend the right amount of time on each thing, to listen to your own creative voice. You're like, okay, that's interesting, or that's not quite right, but I'm pulled towards, so have an intuitive kind of what you're working on at any point, lining up with your vision. So yeah, making it structurally, then also having a creative flow through it, and to have confidence in your own ideas, and to spend time in ideation. Yeah, where we come up with ideas for things. If we're looking at how all these other people's ideas and the things that they've done are super awesome, it's easy to get intimidated. They're like, everything they did in Witcher, crazy. Yeah, like, oh man, the Final Fantasy guys are like, Final Fantasy 16 is like Final Fantasy plus The Witcher. And it totally hit. And they explore a lot of things within there, but like the open world stuff and questing is there. And then Final Fantasy VII, the second part of the new games, was like we integrated the quests of The Witcher into that. We figured out and analyzed all games, and those are the ones that worked best out of everything by a pretty good amount. So like that, plus everything that was working in Final Fantasy. It's not exactly that, but a fusion of exactly that. And then everyone in the world was like, oh my god, it's so fun. It's good. Because they used a really working formula and then, build on that. To use that as a structure and then build it way up. They make castles out of that framework. And it works really, really, really well. And do new things with it as well. Explore things that they had that were working. Stuff like Final Fantasy VII had a lot of mini games that just broke into completely different controls that move the game from one place to another and adds to the world's sense of diversity and characters being a part of this and not knowing what's coming next. It's a very unique entertainment value, and they did that with a whole bunch of different, like, what are the best mini games in modern games? There's not as many as there should be. Integrating those into the world of the game, there's masterful design there. Don't think like, they just took the quest of The Witcher, because that is the best active quest system that also explores a world and character at the same time as being really, really fun to play. And putting the power of the progression and story of the game back into your hand, like the story is really, really good, and it is. When you get back to an open section and you're like, out of these 10 people and quests, who do you want to go? And then when you get there, what do you want to do? So you've had enough interactive as an active participant in the creation of the world of the game, where then when you sit back and it's like these long ass story sequences and they're really, really good, you can just enjoy it. You're not like chomping at the bit to like be choosing what you do next, because you get a really good amount of choice within that game place. So to have that as a breath of fresh air into the world of the game before you jump into the next sequence of the story, so you can have it be as in-depth and awesome as possible while still keeping people like right there, right? Entertained, focused, like lined up, right? Like enjoying the game as much as possible. Yeah, really good. Yeah, but then you could be like, oh yeah, okay, interesting characters and events and stuff. Good gameplay, type mechanics that drive the world of the game, interaction with, you can start just coming up with ideas and to know that they're not going to be finished. But even if there's a spark of inspiration there, and anything that you want to learn, you can. There's people that also have all the skills that you do not. So to imagine the world of a game, to imagine a skill set that you don't have, is something that you can do with Liberty as a creator, and it's a necessary part of collaborative design and entertainment, right? Because the team can be so big, you can't hand make anything. So you can, like, if you're like, okay, I want there to be a sequence with some good character writing or something, you can go and invest yourself in character writing and put that together. You can learn anything and engage with that. You can also imagine a collaboration there and something, and to learn at least a little bit of it. If you're like, I want there to be an engagement between these people, there's this conflict and rivalry, and you go and you learn both sides of it, and there is a conflict, but then they learn how to work together, right? And then I don't know, they've got rival gangs and they work together, and now they're doing something positive, and it's good even for all those NPCs and the people around the town that you met and you talked to. I'm talking about like the world of the War of the Words scenario from Samurai Champloo right there. Right? There's like a rivalry, and the way they work through that's really good. But it's like the whole town is a character in this thing and this conflict. Then they work together and they find a common enemy, the Tokugo, Shogunate, and they're gonna take it on and avenge the death of their parents through their love of graffiti. So good. The fucking bit when they storm the castle with their buckets and their brushes and stuff, and they're like gangsters, but they're like, we're gonna get them with our art, with our words, yo. It's so good. You wouldn't expect that, you know? The idea of like a graffiti story, like a bunch of people live in street life who find the power of words through their expression of their graffiti, even though it was part of their gang affiliations, and that's what gave them strength or something, even if it wasn't good. And the old masters of the temple are like, you've fallen off of the way. They used what was in their life to find their way again. And while they're doing the attack on the castle, like the guy's like, they got it. Beautiful story, you know? Beautiful. But I like unmasking and deconstructing stories down to a generic basis where what I said before didn't have to end up like that and doesn't have to end up like that at all. And if I was doing that, you know, I'd explore it in different directions. Like, what's that look like in a cowboy scenario? Maybe there's some mysteries and some things that they both don't understand. Maybe they both have good points in different ways. So it makes a poignant debate of ideas, and to explore a debate of ideas through character while you're doing like a quest or something. So these have like the game framework, and then there's narrative bits that add flavor and life to the world. And you can do that without knowing intensive character writing, but to let the characters come alive for you. And there you can tap into any writing instructor, you know, where Brandon Sanderson's whole course is about sci-fi fantasy, fiction, genre stories, you know, and getting really good at that. But he also does like just his thoughts on narrative and looking at things different writers do. Like, how do you embody a character who is very different from yourself, and to explore that believably and to do the right amount of research into what people have done, but then to step into the mind and life of this character and to create words and emotions and to have that be like way different than yourself. So there's like an element of acting that goes into it, and a lot of empathy and consideration and such, to think in ways that are completely different from your own and to do so believably in the world. That's crazy. That's magic. And it obviously, yeah, for myself, that is intimidating. It's very intimidating. It's but it's fun too, you know. And there's definitely moments where like, what's this person's motivations or something? What are the things that they care about? What is their you know, their character here? And letting a character like surprise you with like, and then there's a scenario when you're kind of doing like a light math equation. I'm like, based on everything they're trying to do and where they're at right now, how's their character feel about this? What do they say? And to let that surprise you, even where it's not quite a math problem. It's not like based on all the pieces, what deductively should they say, but to keep all of those pieces and elements to make them a part of the reaction, and then to explore that, engage that imagination, freedom, fun, play, because those are the best lines in movies and stuff. It's not like what analytically they would say in that situation, or it doesn't have to be. It's how they embody the emotion of the character and innovate on that situation. Like different actors, you have a line in a script, but then once they've become the character in the world, how they relate to those lines and deliver them, changing and adding value to the end scene. Some of the best scenes of all time. Movie storytellers, movie creation guys will tell you that too. Or if you wrote the script and you had the vision for it, but then it evolved and it became something more. Like giving a totally positive voice that wasn't what they thought, but yet it was more than that. Yeah, that's good. You should never be open to having really cool lines, but you don't even need them. If you're writing scenario for a thing that you think is cool, you don't have to have every line be like this unique thing, but it could be as well. And I like to think that that's like an element that you'd always have, is if you're writing the dialogue at the last bit, even if you're just writing a bit of dialogue and you're still collaborating with other writers, or you're still learning, to give yourself a little bit of freedom to play with it and write something that might be kind of surprising, that will add something to it. Really cool. Really cool. All right, now I could keep going with this exploration into narrative continuity and a bunch of other things, and trying to create believable characters. Like for the longest time, I'm gonna find a bunch of acting or yeah, acting instructors too, maybe, like writer people. They're trying to write a kind of like a fantasy or sci-fi story, but about a child soldier. If you had experienced that level of trauma and desensitization and crazy shit happening, how much of you is still a kid? How much is what would your thought process be like? Because I was always have been interested in the stories of child soldiers where kids aren't ready for the world in all kinds of ways, but oh my god, what if they're thrust into this world of violence and chaos and they don't have a say in it? How do they deal with that? And to believe in redemption and salvation, and even there's heroism in even the most trying of scenarios, and people can rise to almost any challenge. So at first it's the world of child soldiers is often ignored, and you want to cast a positive vote of the power transformation and the human condition and people's ability to rise to super scary challenges. But I just don't know. I would sit there and try and write dialogue, and I don't know how that trauma would be processed. Everything that I would write would feel I imagine that and I went online and I was how child soldiers think, or stories of rehabilitation. I'm sure there's these things, but I don't want to get too heavy, or I wouldn't write a fantasy. You probably could. You could set both things down. I real content, refugee stories and people. Yeah, North Korea, all kinds of places. People that really go through the shit. War stories, real crime and social development go hand in hand. So there's a lot of hardcore stories on the streets of disenfranchised places, but then the communities that help to deal with and process things, and how you turn that into a positive transformation, and to have the consideration of the whole of the world while you imagine world progression, super healthy, where you don't have to do everything. Obviously, there's really dedicated, really good people on the ground level all over the place. People in troubled neighborhoods that are still trying to be the good therapists and people with empathy, working on human transformation one to one. on the ground level. Super good, like the highest respect. And they're there, but you want to have consideration for like uh, all of the challenge, struggle, trial spaces, the dynamism of human life. And then if you're thinking of like the world developing in positive ways and moving towards an awesome radical future of dreams, creation, peace, life, yeah, then it locks in to the real world. It's grounded in like an evolution that takes place from here with everything that we have to be grateful for and everything that's already awesome about here as we move towards the best world that we can possibly imagine together. Yeah. So yeah, if you're thinking of like awesome schools and how the education could work best, you're like, what about the most disenfranchised places? How are you going to integrate for them? It's like, well, you're going to use the people that are there and have consideration of these spaces and create dialogue with these spaces. You don't have to figure everything out by yourself before you start. And then the consideration that you give to that becomes like a valuable thing. It's like, now your plan's even better, and it's a work in progress. Yeah. And if you imagine human transformation, and you don't just imagine it in places that are already awesome in the first world, but also as ripples of transformation, to move out to like even the most difficult places, it's even more. It's way more, way more. And value in unlocking people's innovative potential. You have like tribal people with a completely different way of looking at the world. You're able to introduce elements of modernity to them in a way that, brings peace and balance with respect to their tribal life. So you can integrate, and you have that integrative phase, from like their language, then their thought process, and the things that they bring to the table are entirely unique. Really exciting. Not everyone has to be a part of it, but you never know when the next genius medicine development fucking dude is like a kid in this third world village that has this drive to like create like I don't know, healing or something, and the way the world works to them fits together in different ways in their mind. And it's like, if you can find them and, with the proper respect and channels, give them all of the education and the space to become that genius innovator that they already are. Hey, like the next greatest innovation in medical technology that could save and transform millions of lives, being that like unlocking that power source, unlocking that imagination and intelligence that's already there. Yeah, using what we have to like the best of our abilities to create the best world possible together. Just being a part of it, whatever way you can. And to also cast that vote, if you're like, shit, I'm like, that's super interesting and engage with these other worlds. It's like, you can cast a vote of confidence at things while still being as invested as you want in them. If you're doing like a sports thing, you're like a professional gamer or like a sports star or something, and you're like, that's not that relevant to your active world, but maybe it should be. And you can pick up a book sometimes and to cast a vote of that change happening without having to actively stop what you're doing and go there and do the change yourself. Like, I'm one of the people that's on it, and in learning about human stories and especially the human condition, if you're like, I should be better here, it could be better here, there's lots of obstacles, but there's also a lot of potential. It's like, you don't have to stop being a sports star, and even like if you're like, that's something that I believe in, you can believe in it from whatever level you are at, without feeling like shouldn't even mention it because you don't have the mastery or the in-depth know-how or something. Because the world doesn't need someone else. It needs your innovations from your perspective to the world, whatever your personal quest is. It's a mission-based philosophy, state-based philosophy. While we try and create a positive ripple effect of people doing things in their own way, engaging that inspiration, but doing things together as well, and having a consideration, respect, and empathy for each other. So you can learn about more things as well. while still gearing into what you are driven for. What is your purpose? What is your passion? And then you can add that from your place of inspiration and power to things that are meaningful to you in your own unique way. Yeah. All right, so goals and dreams and visions and putting this all together. I was gonna make a 5 minute thing where I talked about like what does Metal Gear look like with a perfect narrative continuity, and using like theoretical tech and abilities and stuff for all of the different pieces and how you make a gameplay flow out of these things, so that you're just totally invested and immersed in the world of the game. And it's really cool. I honestly think, yeah, what Mass Effect does is so much cooler than what I saw in Red Dead Redemption. Even though it was a really cool game, it's like it didn't hook me on the world of the game and being a part of it. Like it's fun to like do active cowboy movie stuff. Like I love cowboy movies, you know, and good gunplay in games is cool, right? And just through all those, like you be Clint Eastwood for a second, and then you're John Marston again. He's bitching about everything. There's only terrible people in this world too. There's only like predator. There's like the coolest dude ever. He's like a black dude. He's a bounty hunter, and he gives you a magnum. He's like the only character in the game. Oh man, he was the guy. Oh, that's good. All right, I'm feeling good about this. Move forward. Uh, Learning how to draw, all kinds of things. I'll come back to the art series. Peace and love.